An elderly black man stepped slowly into the gleaming marble floors of a luxury bank in Manhattan. He looked out of place among the polished glass, sleek suits, and soft piano music floating in the air. His worn-out jacket was neatly pressed, though aged Auntie clutched a weathered leather wallet with careful hands. His eyes moved gently around the room, reading the signs, unsure but composed. There was a quiet dignity in his walk as he made his way to the back of the short line. The man, whose name was Robert, had come at his son's request. His son Marcus had told him it would be easy, just go in, show your ID, and get the paperwork signed. Marcus was always handling business and finances, and Robert trusted him. After all, Marcus had made something extraordinary of his life, one of the youngest black CEOs in the country, leading a multi-billion-dollar tech company. But Robert never let that pride show too loudly. He had raised Marcus to stay humble, to respect others, and to work hard. That's all he ever wanted. When his turn finally came, Robert approached the front desk, smiling politely. Behind the desk sat a sharply dressed bank manager, white mid-40s, radiating confidence and authority. The manager glanced up, his eyes scanning Robert's clothes before returning to the screen. Without a greeting, he said, "Yes." Robert held out his ID and spoke softly. "I just need to access my savings. My son asked me to come." The manager didn't bother to take the ID from his hand. Instead, he squinted at it, then let out a breath through his nose that felt more like a snort. "This," he said, his tone dry. "This isn't valid here." Robert blinked, confused. "I think there might be a mistake." Before he could finish, the manager flicked the ID from his hand. It tumbled to the ground and landed on the cold, polished marble floor. The sound of it hitting the floor was faint, but in that moment, it was louder than anything else in the room. A silence fell, the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions, it simply bears witness. A nearby teller turned her head, her mouth slightly open. A woman waiting behind Robert gasped, barely audible. The manager, meanwhile, was already turning back to his screen, clearly believing the matter resolved. Robert slowly bent down. At his age, bending wasn't easy. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the ID. He looked at it, the corners frayed from years of careful use. Then he looked up, not with anger, not even hurt, just a quiet, tired disappointment, the kind that settles into a person when they've seen too much of this world and still hoped for something better. Before he could take a step back, a young teller, nervous and wide-eyed, hurried over. "Sir," she whispered, her voice trembling, "are you Mr. Jensen's father, Marcus Jensen?" Robert gave a small nod, unsure why it mattered. The teller's eyes widened. "Please wait right here," she said, already reaching for the phone. Robert stood still, cradling his ID, unaware that the next few moments would ripple far beyond this bank. He didn't know that in a glass-paneled boardroom across the city, his son Marcus would soon be informed that as a CEO, but as a son that the man who had raised him, who worked double shifts to keep food on the table, had just been disrespected by someone who thought power gave them the right to dismiss kindness. In that moment, Robert wasn't a billionaire's father. He was just another older black man being treated as less than. And yet, the quiet way he picked up his ID, the way he didn't shout, didn't curse, didn't retaliate, it said everything about the strength he had passed down to his son. The bank didn't know it yet, but a single flick of the hand, a careless moment of arrogance, was about to cost them $5 billion. And more importantly, it would become a story told in boardrooms, on social media, and in homes across America. Because sometimes, it's not the loudest voice that shakes the world, it's the silent dignity of a man who knows exactly who he is and raises a son who never forgets it. As Robert slowly bent down to pick up his ID from the cold marble floor, a hush still hung heavy in the bank lobby. The bank manager had already dismissed him, tapping away on his keyboard like nothing had happened. But not everyone in the room was indifferent. A young teller, no more than 25, stood frozen behind her window. Her eyes followed the man's trembling hands, the way he cradled his ID like it was something precious, something personal. There was something familiar in the last name she saw on that card, Jensen. Heart pounding. She stepped from behind her counter and approached him. "Sir, excuse me," she said gently, her voice just above a whisper. "Are you Mr. Jensen's father, Marcus Jensen?" Robert looked up, confused. "Yes, I'm his dad. Do you know him?" Her eyes widened. "Everyone knows him, sir." Without waiting another moment, she turned and rushed back to her station. Her hands fumbled slightly as she reached for the bank's direct line to corporate clients. She bypassed protocol, knowing this moment was bigger than her job. Across town, in a sleek glass tower overlooking the skyline, Marcus Jensen was in a meeting. The kind of meeting where billion-dollar ideas are born, where investors lean in when he speaks. He was calm, composed, and used to being the smartest man in the room, but when his assistant interrupted the meeting to hand him the phone, everything shifted. Marcus, the teller's voice crackled through the line, breathless and anxious. Your father came into the Madison branch. I think something really bad just happened. Marcus stood up, his chair sliding back. What happened? His voice was already sharpening. She explained in brief stammers how his father was disrespected, how the manager threw his ID on the floor, how he was made to feel small. For a few seconds, the room was silent on his end. Then came the words, cold and steady. Put the manager on. No raised voice, no shouting, just a command laced with warning. Back at the bank, the teller handed the phone over to the manager now, visibly confused. He took it casually at first, rolling his eyes, annoyed at the interruption. Yes, this is Todd from Madison branch. He didn't even finish the sentence. His face dropped. He stood up. His hand holding the phone began to shake slightly as the voice on the other end told him exactly who he had just insulted, and what that man meant to one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. And in that moment, the careless flick of an ID to the floor turned into the beginning of a storm no one in the building could have seen coming. 45 minutes later, the atmosphere inside the Madison branch had shifted entirely. The sleek calm of high-end banking was replaced with a charged tension. Whispers floated through the air as staff nervously glanced at the front doors. Customers lingered longer than necessary, sensing something was about to happen. The young teller who made the call stood at her station, heart racing, eyes on the entrance. Outside. The sound of low engine hum grew louder before a black luxury car rolled to a stop in front of the building. Its tinted windows reflected the city skyline, a silent warning of power arriving. The door opened. Out stepped Marcus Jensen. He stood tall 6'4", sharply dressed in a charcoal suit, shoulders squared, presence commanding. He didn't look around, he didn't need to. Every pair of eyes was already fixed on him. Phones slipped quietly out of pockets. Cameras were rolling, but Marcus didn't care. He hadn't come for attention. He had come for justice. He walked with quiet precision, straight toward the front desk. Employees parted like waves in his path. The same manager, Todd, stood frozen near the counter, his face pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but Marcus got there first. He stopped inches away, towering above the man who had humiliated his father. You disrespected my father, Marcus said, his voice low but cutting through the air like thunder. The man who worked 3 jobs to raise me, the man who skipped meals so I could have books, the man whose savings helped me start my company when no one else would believe in me. Todd stammered, his mouth dry. Mr. Jensen, I wasn't aware, I had no idea. Marcus raised a hand slightly, not to threaten, but to silence. And now, Marcus continued, you humiliated that same man, not knowing who he was, not caring because to you, he was just an old black man who didn't belong in your polished world. The room was silent. No one breathed. Even the security guards stood still, unsure what to do with their hands. Todd tried again, desperate. I deeply apologize. It was a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can. Marcus shook his head, calm but resolute. I was finalizing a $5 billion investment deal with this bank. Your bank. I had everything. Lined up teams, strategy, trust. He took a breath, then looked Todd straight in the eyes. It ends here. The weight of the words landed with force. The kind of silence that followed wasn't just shook, it was shame. No one needed to speak. Everyone in that bank knew. Something permanent had just shifted. Marcus turned to his father, who had been watching quietly from the side. Robert's eyes welled slightly, but he gave his son a small nod, the same nod he used to give after every school play, every graduation, every success. Marcus walked toward him, extended his hand. Let's go, Dad. We're taking our business somewhere that knows what respect means. And just like that, they walked out, leaving a billion-dollar silence behind them. Outside the bank, a small crowd had gathered. Word of what happened inside had spread like wildfire, staff texting friends, bystanders posting videos, news alerts pinging across social media. Reporters arrive, cameras rolling, mics outstretched, each hoping to capture the story firsthand. But when Marcus Jensen stepped through the bank's glass doors with his father at his side, he wasn't seeking revenge or spectacle. He had something more powerful in mind. Asterisk dressed in quiet strength. Marcus paused on the steps, looked out over the growing crowd, and spoke not to defend his name, but to lift up the one who had made his name possible. Asterisk, my father, he began, voice steady, was judged today by the color of his skin, by the clothes he wore, by a man who never bothered to ask his name. But I want something to be clear. He turned to the cameras, locking eyes with millions through the lens. No one's title, race, or clothing defines their worth. Not in this city, not in this country. My father is a king, not because he's rich, but because he worked 3 jobs to put food on our table. Because he believed in me before anyone else did. Because he carried dignity through decades of being overlooked. Asterisk, he glanced at his father who stood quietly beside him, a mix of humility and pride washing over his face. Asterisk, every parent, every elder, deserves to be treated with dignity, Marcus continued, not because of who their children are, but because of who they are. Asterisk, a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Some clapped, a few wiped tears. Asterisk then, without anger or theatrics, Marcus turned to his father, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, and said with a smile, let's go open your accounts somewhere better. Asterisk, and with that, they walked away not as a CEO and his father, but as two men who had just reminded the world what true respect looks like. Asterisk, in a quiet corner of the city, far from the towering glass buildings and echoing marble floors, a small, black-owned community bank welcomed to new visitors. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow across the modest storefront. There were no cameras here, no crowds, just the soft hum of conversation and the gentle sound of keys tapping behind the counter. Asterisk, Marcus Jensen and his father stepped inside. Asterisk, the atmosphere was different from the cold formality they had left behind. A receptionist greeted them with a smile that reached her eyes. Moments later, the bank's manager, middle-aged black man with kind eyes and a firm handshake, emerged from his office. Asterisk, you must be Mr. Robert Jensen, he said, walking straight to Robert and shaking his hand with genuine respect. It's an honor, sir. Asterisk, Robert blinked, a little taken aback. You know who I am. Asterisk, the manager chuckled warmly. We know greatness when we see it. Asterisk, Marcus sat beside his father at the small wooden desk. The contrast to the cold, impersonal counter at the previous bank unmistakable. Here, everything felt human, real, right. Asterisk, papers were placed gently on the table, forms filled out carefully. Marcus signed not only to open his father's account, but also to finalize a new chapter, an investment deal worth over $5 billion, moved entirely from the bank that had disrespected them, to this humble community institution that led with heart. Asterisk, there were no high-tech boardrooms, no marble fountains, but here, Marcus found something far more valuable: dignity, belonging, and the chance to uplift a place that saw his father as more than a name on an ID. Asterisk, as the final document was signed, Marcus looked over at his father. Robert smiled, his eyes misty, his shoulders a little straighter. Asterisk, and as they rose to leave, a quiet voice, rich with purpose, echoed in the background like a voiceover from a story bigger than just their own. Asterisk, respect isn't earned by money. It's given through humanity. And sometimes, walking away is how you show the world what real power looks like.